The day does not care about your plans. It will come whether you are ready or not, whether you have ordered your soul or let it scatter into fragments during the night. Most people wake up as victims, subjects of circumstance, slaves to the first notification, the first worry, the first impulse that crosses their consciousness. They hand over their sovereignty before their feet touch the floor. But here is the question that should trouble you. If you cannot command your own morning, how can you possibly expect to command your life? The ancient Stoics understood something we have forgotten in our age of convenience and distraction. They knew that freedom is not found in the absence of struggle, but in the deliberate ordering of the self before the chaos begins. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, did not wake up feeling motivated. He woke up reluctant, resistant, human. Yet each morning, he reminded himself of what he was: a rational being with duties to fulfill, a mind capable of rising above comfort and choosing purpose over ease. He did not wait for inspiration. He commanded himself into readiness. This is not about productivity hacks or morning routines designed to maximize output. This is about something far more ancient and essential: the practice of taking dominion over your inner kingdom before the external world makes its demands. We live in an era where the first hour of the day is treated as disposable, a blur of reaction and consumption. We reach for our phones before we reach for our thoughts. We scroll before we center. We consume before we create. And in doing so, we surrender the only time that truly belongs to us: the quiet hours before the world wakes, when our minds are still ours to shape. Seneca once wrote to a friend, observing how most people squander their lives not because they lack time, but because they lack command over it. They let the day happen to them rather than happening to the day. The morning, he argued, is where this pattern begins. If you lose the morning, you lose the war before the first battle is even fought. The undisciplined man wakes without intention, moves without purpose, and by midday finds himself exhausted by tasks he never chose and emotions he never questioned. The disciplined man, the Stoic, begins differently. He wakes with a plan not for what the world will do, but for what he will be. Consider the difference between these two approaches. One person wakes and immediately checks their messages, their newsfeed, their notifications. Within moments, their emotional state is determined by external forces: an upsetting headline, a demanding email, a comparison that breeds envy. Their cortisol spikes, their attention fractures. They are, from the first moment of consciousness, in a reactive state. Another person wakes and sits in stillness. They remind themselves of their principles. They visualize the challenges ahead not with anxiety, but with resolve. They ask themselves the question Epictetus urged his students to ask: what is within my control today, and what is not? This person has drawn a line in the sand. They have claimed their morning, and in doing so, claimed their mind. The Stoic ritual of morning mastery is not complicated, but it is demanding. It requires you to resist the gravitational pull of comfort and distraction. It requires you to treat the first hour as sacred, not in a religious sense, but in a psychological one. This is the hour where you establish your identity for the day. Are you someone who is acted upon, or someone who acts? Are you a leaf blown by every wind of circumstance, or a stone unmoved by the current? The morning answers this question before you speak a single word to another human being. Let us walk through what the Stoics practiced, and what we can resurrect in our own lives. The first element is waking with resistance. Marcus Aurelius famously struggled with this. In his private writings, he argued with himself: it is warm under the blankets, the world is cold and demanding, why not stay a little longer? But then he countered his own weakness with reason. You were not made for comfort, he told himself. You were made for work, for purpose, for contribution. Even the plants and animals rise to fulfill their nature. Are you less than they are? This internal dialogue was not self-punishment. It was self-command. He was reminding himself of his role, his nature, his duty. And in that reminder, he found the strength to rise. The second element is solitude before society. Before you speak to another person, before you engage with the demands and dramas of other minds, you must spend time with your own. The Stoics called this morning meditation, but it was not passive. It was active contemplation, a deliberate review of principles, a visualization of challenges, a preparation of the soul. Epictetus would tell his students to imagine the day ahead. You will encounter rudeness, ingratitude, betrayal perhaps. These things are inevitable, but your response is not. If you prepare your mind now, in the stillness, you will not be caught off guard when the storm comes. You will have already decided who you are and how you will respond. The third element is the practice of negative visualization, though we must be careful how we understand this. The Stoics did not dwell in pessimism or catastrophize for the sake of anxiety. They practiced what we might call preemptive acceptance, a clear-eyed acknowledgement that loss, frustration, and difficulty are woven into the fabric of existence. Each morning, the Stoic would contemplate what could go wrong, not to fear it, but to remove its power. If I lose this thing I value, I will still have my reason. If this person disappoints me, I will still have my principles. If this plan fails, I will still have my capacity to choose my response. By rehearsing loss in the mind, the Stoic insulated himself against the emotional devastation that comes from clinging too tightly to things outside his control. Modern psychology has validated this ancient practice. Research into stress inoculation shows that people who mentally rehearse difficulties before they occur handle them with greater composure when they arrive. The mind that has imagined failure is not paralyzed by it. The mind that has contemplated loss is not destroyed by it. This is not pessimism. This is preparation. It is the difference between the soldier who has trained in simulated combat and the one who experiences violence for the first time in battle. One is ready, the other is traumatized. Your morning is your training ground. The battles of the day will come whether you prepare or not, but your capacity to endure them with dignity depends entirely on the work you do before they arrive. The fourth element is the setting of intention. The Stoics did not believe in vague aspirations or motivational slogans. They believed in clear, specific commitments to virtue. Each morning, a Stoic would ask, "What virtue will I practice today? Will I practice patience when provoked? Will I practice courage when facing difficulty? Will I practice justice when it would be easier to look away?" This was not a to-do list. This was a character checklist. The Stoic measured his day not by what he accomplished externally, but by who he became internally. Did he maintain his composure? Did he act with integrity? Did he respond with wisdom rather than impulse? These were the only metrics that mattered. We have lost this entirely in our modern fixation on productivity. We measure our mornings by how many emails we answer, how many tasks we complete, how efficiently we move through our routines. But the Stoics would ask a different question. Did you remain yourself today, or did circumstances turn you into someone you do not respect? A productive day that leaves you compromised in character is a failed day. A difficult day where you maintained your principles is a victory. The morning ritual reorients you toward this truth. It reminds you that your worth is not measured by external achievement, but by internal constancy. The fifth element is physical priming. The Stoics were not mind-body dualists who ignored the physical in favor of the philosophical. They understood that a disciplined body supports a disciplined mind. Marcus Aurelius practiced wrestling. Seneca took cold baths. Epictetus, despite his physical disability, emphasized physical endurance as a training ground for mental endurance. The morning is when you establish command over your body, teaching it that comfort is not king, that you can endure discomfort with equanimity. Whether it is cold water, physical exercise, or simply the act of rising before you feel ready, the body must learn to obey the will. A body that rules you in the morning will sabotage you all day. Consider what happens when you let physical comfort dictate your morning. You hit the snooze button, not because you need more sleep, but because the bed feels better than the day. You skip exercise because you are tired. You reach for sugar and caffeine because your body demands immediate gratification. Each of these small surrenders teaches your nervous system a lesson. When comfort and duty conflict, comfort wins. By the time you reach a moment of real challenge later in the day, your body has already been trained to retreat. But if you establish command in the morning, if you rise when the alarm sounds, if you embrace cold water, if you move your body even when it resists, you teach yourself a different lesson. You are not ruled by sensation. You are ruled by reason. This lesson compounds throughout the day. The sixth element is the practice of gratitude, though not the shallow variety we see in modern self-help. The Stoic practice of gratitude was not about feeling good. It was about seeing clearly. Each morning, the Stoic would acknowledge what he had, health if he had it, relationships if they existed, reason always, and recognize that these things were borrowed, not owned. They could be taken at any moment. This was not meant to induce dread, but to strip away entitlement. When you wake up understanding that you are owed nothing, that every breath is a temporary gift, you stop demanding that the day go your way. You stop collapsing into frustration when things do not meet your expectations. You become grateful for what is, rather than resentful of what is not. Modern neuroscience supports this ancient wisdom in surprising ways. Studies on gratitude practices show measurable changes in brain activity, specifically, increased activation in regions associated with emotional regulation and decreased activation in areas linked to stress and anxiety. But the Stoic version goes deeper than contemporary gratitude journals. It is not merely listing things you appreciate. It is confronting impermanence. It is looking at your life and acknowledging that none of it is guaranteed, that everything you value hangs by a thread, and that this fragility should make you more present, not more fearful. When Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning that he could die today, he was not being morbid. He was being honest, and that honesty made him kinder, more patient, more purposeful. The seventh element is the rehearsal of philosophy. The Stoics did not treat philosophy as an academic exercise. They treated it as medicine for the soul, and like all medicine, it required regular doses. Each morning, a Stoic would read or recite maxims, principles, and teachings that fortified the mind against error. Epictetus would have his students memorize key doctrines so that in moments of passion or confusion, the truth would be immediately available. You cannot think clearly in the heat of anger or the fog of fear. But if you have trained your mind in the morning, if you have rehearsed your principles when you were calm, they will arise automatically when you are not. This is why we must return to the practice of reading philosophy in the morning, not for inspiration, but for inoculation. Read Marcus Aurelius reminding himself that other people's opinions cannot harm him. Read Seneca explaining that anxiety about the future is borrowed suffering. Read Epictetus teaching that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events. Let these truths settle into your consciousness before the day's distortions begin. When someone insults you later, when a plan falls apart, when disappointment arrives, your trained mind will offer you a different interpretation than your untrained emotions. This is not suppression. This is substitution, replacing a harmful thought pattern with a truthful one. The eighth element, and perhaps the most challenging, is the acceptance of difficulty. The Stoic morning ritual did not involve affirmations that the day would be easy or that everything would work out. It involved a clear-eyed acknowledgement that the day would contain obstacles, and that these obstacles were not interruptions to your path, they were the path. Marcus Aurelius wrote that impediments to action advance action, that what stands in the way becomes the way. This is not motivational rhetoric. This is a profound reorientation of how we perceive difficulty. Most people wake up hoping for a smooth day, and when friction arrives, they interpret it as evidence that something has gone wrong. The Stoic wakes up expecting friction and interpreting it as an opportunity to practice virtue. A difficult conversation is a chance to practice patience. A financial setback is a chance to practice resilience. A betrayal is a chance to practice forgiveness or discernment. When you reframe obstacles as training equipment rather than punishments, you stop resenting them. You might even welcome them, the way an athlete welcomes resistance training. The morning is when you set this frame. You remind yourself, I am not entitled to ease. I am entitled to nothing. But I am capable of meeting whatever comes with strength and reason. Consider the psychological shift this creates. The person who wakes expecting ease is fragile. The first obstacle shatters them. They spend the day in disappointment, resentment, or defeat. The person who wakes expecting challenge is anti-fragile. Obstacles do not surprise them. They confirm what was already known, that life is difficult, and that this difficulty is the forge in which character is built. This person does not waste energy lamenting what should not be. They conserve their energy for responding to what is. By the end of the day, one person is exhausted by resistance. The other is strengthened by it. The ninth element is the practice of purposeful action. Before the day scatters your attention across a dozen trivial demands, the Stoic morning asks, what is my chief concern today? Not what is urgent, but what is important. Not what others demand, but what my principles require. The undisciplined mind treats all tasks as equal, jumping from one to another based on whim or external pressure. The disciplined mind identifies the essential and protects it fiercely. This requires clarity, and clarity requires stillness. In the morning, before the noise begins, you decide what deserves your finite attention and energy. Everything else is relegated to secondary status or eliminated entirely. Seneca wrote that people are frugal with their property but wasteful with their time, the one thing that actually belongs to them. The morning ritual is an act of time sovereignty. You are declaring that your hours will not be stolen by trivia, that your attention will not be hijacked by every passing demand. You are building a moat around your purpose, and that moat is built in the morning. When requests and distractions come later, and they will, you already know what matters. You can say no without guilt because you said yes to something greater when your mind was clear. The 10th and final element is the commitment to self-renewal. The Stoic morning ritual is not a one-time event. It is a daily return to first principles, a continuous recalibration of the self. We drift. This is human nature. We forget what we resolved yesterday. We slip back into old patterns. We let circumstances erode our clarity. The morning is our opportunity to remember, to reset, to begin again. There is no shame in needing this daily practice. Even Marcus Aurelius, with all his power and wisdom, wrote his meditations as daily reminders because he knew how easy it is to lose your way. This is perhaps the most liberating aspect of the Stoic morning ritual. You do not have to be perfect yesterday to begin again today. You do not have to have mastered yourself completely to practice mastery this morning. Each dawn is a new opportunity to command yourself, to choose reason over impulse, to act with virtue rather than convenience. The person you were yesterday, reactive, distracted, weak in certain moments, does not have to be the person you are today. But this requires intention. It requires the deliberate act of waking up and deciding who you will be before the world tells you who to be. Let us return to the central paradox we began with. Everyone wants peace, but no one wants discipline. Everyone wants a calm mind, but no one wants to do the work of calming it. Everyone wants to feel in control of their lives, but no one wants to practice control over themselves. The Stoic morning ritual resolves this paradox. It gives you the only kind of peace that actually exists, not the peace of having everything go your way, but the peace of being unmoved when it does not. This is not achieved through wishful thinking or positive affirmations. It is achieved through daily practice, through the unglamorous work of rising early, sitting in stillness, rehearsing principles, preparing your mind, and commanding your body before the day commands you. Think about what you are actually doing when you practice this ritual. You are creating a psychological fortress. The walls are not built from stone, but from habit. Each morning you reinforce them. Each morning you remind yourself that you are not a victim of circumstances, that your inner life belongs to you, that no external event can disturb your reason unless you permit it. This is not delusion. This is the most realistic assessment of human agency possible. You cannot control the weather, the economy, other people's choices, or 1,000 other variables. But you can control your judgments about them. You can control whether you respond with wisdom or foolishness, with patience or rage, with courage or cowardice. The morning is when you sharpen these capacities. Modern life has made the morning ritual nearly impossible. We are assaulted from the moment we wake. Notifications designed to trigger urgency, news crafted to provoke outrage, algorithms engineered to fragment attention. The default path is to surrender immediately, to let these systems colonize your consciousness before you have even decided what you think or who you are. To resist this requires more than willpower. It requires architecture. You must design your environment to protect the morning. Put your phone in another room. Prepare your space the night before. Remove friction from the practices that matter and add friction to the habits that undermine you. This is not about perfection. This is about creating conditions where your highest self has a fighting chance against your lowest impulses. Consider what happens over time when you practice this ritual consistently. The changes are subtle at first. You notice you are slightly less reactive to provocation. You recover from disappointment a bit faster. You feel more grounded when chaos erupts around you. But these small shifts accumulate. After months, you realize you are a different person. The things that used to destabilize you no longer do. The opinions that used to wound you bounce off. The circumstances that used to control your emotional state have lost their power. You have become what the Stoics called the inner citadel, a fortress of reason that no external force can breach without your permission. This is not cold detachment. This is not emotional numbness. This is sovereignty. You still feel deeply, perhaps more deeply than before, because you are no longer overwhelmed by your feelings. You still care, perhaps more genuinely, because your care is rooted in principle rather than need. You still engage with the world, perhaps more effectively, because you are responding with wisdom rather than reacting with impulse. But you are no longer tossed by every wave. You have found your center, and you return to it each morning. The Stoic ritual of morning mastery is not about becoming superhuman. It is about becoming fully human, awake, aware, intentional, free. Free not from difficulty, but from being controlled by it. Free not from emotion, but from being ruled by it. Free not from the world's demands, but from the belief that those demands define your worth. This freedom is available to anyone willing to do the work. It does not require wealth or status or special circumstances. It requires only this: that you wake before you are ready, sit before you are comfortable, and command yourself before the world attempts to command you. Each morning you have a choice. You can hand over your consciousness to whatever grabs it first, or you can claim it deliberately. You can begin the day as a subject of circumstance, or as a sovereign of your inner kingdom. The world will not make this easy. It will offer you comfort, distraction, and 1,000 reasons to delay or surrender. But if you can hold the morning, if you can establish command over yourself in those quiet hours, you will find that the rest of the day, no matter how chaotic, cannot touch what matters most. You will have become what Marcus Aurelius strived to be, not because he ruled an empire, but because he ruled himself. The day does not care about your plans. But if you command your morning, the day will answer to you, not because it obeys, but because you no longer need it to. If you seek this kind of mastery over yourself, not over circumstances, then continue this journey with us. Subscribe to Beyond the Logos, and each week we will walk deeper into the ancient wisdom that makes modern life bearable. The path is not easy, but it is the only one that leads to true freedom.